like to welcome the Rojas family up to light the chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Kraushar. I'm the Director of Programming and Community Outreach here at the church, and I'd like to welcome our kiddos to come up for a fun time for all ages. So this month, our focus is the practice of joy. And last week, for those of you that were here with us, we practiced cultivating joy through silliness and laughter. But this week, we're going to shift our perspective to a sense of joy that is never lost, but is always changing. So I have a couple of questions for you guys. All right. So, have you guys ever visited with a family member or an old friend that you haven't seen for a long time and felt that no time at all had passed since you saw them last? You can raise your hands. And before you met up with that person, did you feel like maybe they'd be quite a bit different? Do you have any expectations of how the visit would go? And then after you met up with them, did they seem like the same person after all? Right, so they're the same person, but they maybe are a little bit older, they've changed a little bit. Was there ever a time when somebody did something really kind for you, and a long time after that, you still felt a sense of joy from that act of kindness? Has that ever happened to anybody? Somebody, raise your hands if you've ever had this happen, where somebody did something really nice for you, and a long time afterwards, you still felt a little bit of that joy that was left over from that act of kindness. Couple of people? Okay. So the joy created from that act of kindness still holds a place today. That joy remains. But it might feel a little bit different than it did at first, but it is never lost. So we have a representation of a caterpillar right here. It's really cute, yep. And we're going to pretend that this caterpillar represents this church community, our UU community. And I'm going to place it right in the middle of this picture right here, so excuse me. So that caterpillar represents something, like I just said. That caterpillar represents this community. So each Sunday, we have a different combination of faces here, different people that come and enjoy the service. And we talk about different things every Sunday. But even with all of those differences, it's still the same community week after week. It's a constant, even as it evolves and transforms and changes. So to represent that transformation, we're each going to add a piece of this tissue paper to the canvas, and we're going to watch as it evolves. So I'm going to invite each of you to grab a hold of one of those.
I have an expectation
So what you're going
about
to do is you're going to pinch the piece of paper in the middle, and then you're going to turn it around and dump that middle of the square a little bit into this glue, and then you're going to put it next to the caterpillar, just like that. So everyone gets an opportunity to do that. So Jaya, why don't you go first, and then you guys can just come through. Yep. All right. And so we're going to witness this caterpillar transform, and then after we go downstairs and we come back up, you guys, I bet we're going to see a major transformation happen after everyone's had an opportunity to do this. So let's take just a moment. That's great, Jaya. Let the next person go. Yep. All right. Yep, you can tell me something after you put it on. Okay, go ahead and put it on. Yep, you're gonna put it right here. Place it right there. There we go.
I have an
Go ahead, put it right here.
expectation of how this is gonna go.
All right, and we're gonna talk about that downstairs.
It's
So
gonna,
after
it's gonna burn.
after you've put your tissue on, please go back to your seat. We're gonna listen to special music, and then we'll come back after our program to see what transformation has taken place.
Can I tell you? The whole place is gonna smell.
All right, and you may have all noticed that all of you have a little piece of tissue paper in your order of service. So at any point throughout the service, if you want to quietly come put your little piece of paper on, or after the service, we'll kind of see how it transforms throughout the service. So our centering words this morning, actually, one of my fellow minister colleagues posted this on Facebook last night, and I love how the universe kind of works. But this actually, she said, what she shared, I asked Chat GTP what the spiritual truth of Easter is. And this is what Chat GTP did. I don't use AI yet, but this was really beautiful. So it came up with the forgotten spiritual truth of Easter. It says Easter belongs to earth, not the church. Sit with me a moment. Let me tell you a truth that was buried but never lost. A truth that lives in the soil, the stars, and your own soul. Easter is not Christian. It is ancient. It is pagan, and it is deeply, deeply spiritual. Long before cathedrals and crosses, there were circles of women gathered by firelight. There were chants sung to the moon. There were seeds placed in the ground with prayer. Spring was a sacred time. The earth was waking. The light was returning. And the people felt it, not in scripture, but in their bones. They didn't need a book to know God was near, because they saw it in the bloom, the birth, the breath of life returning. They called this season Ostara, named after the goddess of the dawn. She was the spirit of fertility, transformation, and sacred balance. She arrived with the spring equinox when the light and dark stood as equals, a reminder that death is never the end. The hare was her creature, wild, intuitive, lunar. The egg was her vessel, whole, mysterious, filled with potential. These weren't decorations. They were symbols of divine creation, reminders that we too are cyclical, that we are allowed to shed, sleep, grieve, and then rise. When Christianity spread, it didn't erase this. It layered its own story of death and resurrection on top of something already deeply known. Because people already understood resurrection, they saw it every spring. But the true roots, they were earth-based, feminine, embodied, pagan. So what is Easter really? It is a cosmic rite of rebirth. It's not about one man rising. It's about all of us returning to the light after our own winters. It's about the body, the earth, the divine feminine blooming once more. It's a call to rise from the darkness, to become again, to be born wiser, fuller, more whole. You don't need a pulpit to feel that. You only need a quiet moment, a breath, the scent of blossoms, and a soul ready to awaken. That's the Easter they forgot to tell you about, but it never forgot you.
In every
This community of care is created through our work and our time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values. As we pass these baskets, we thank you for your generous gifts which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. As a reflection of our values, we are pleased to participate in the Change for Change program. The coins you place in the basket today will support the work of nonprofits in and around the Grand Valley. With gratitude, we will now receive today's offering. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it. Please stand in body or spirit as we sing, let's see. Yes. How could anyone number 1053?
Connected to
Good morning. You know, it's always interesting being in a Unitarian Universalist church on Easter Sunday because our roots, our historical roots, are Christian, and yet one of my favorite verses in one of my favorite hymns is called "Spirit of Life," and there's a verse that says, "Roots hold me close, and wings set me free." And I feel like for us on Sundays, on Easter Sunday, that's kind of what it's kind of that juxtaposition that we try to find that balance between our roots and our wings. And like the reading earlier, it's always a nice reminder also that the roots, we have Christian roots, but the roots go way deeper than just Christianity. And that's always a really beautiful reminder. And so I'm so glad that we're able to embrace all of our roots today and spread our wings a little bit and think about how life can be outside of some of the paradigms that many of us were raised with that almost sometimes feel like a box. And so, as I was reflecting on what I wanted to say today, most of you, if you're a visitor or a guest, one thing that the congregation will probably tell you about me is that I like to be real and I like to be authentic, and it's hard for me to pretend that something is not happening if it's happening. So I name things that are happening. And so as I was thinking about my message this morning, I have to admit that I have spent most of my life maybe naively believing that humanity has evolved beyond the consciousness of what people were living in 2,000 years ago. And I think perhaps naively I had believed that we as a culture, as Western culture, as a humanity, that we had evolved beyond the Holocaust. And when we said never again, I thought we really meant never again. And yet in the year 2025, I'm watching what I was taught to believe, what I was taught as an American is that, you know, we are one of the more evolved countries, and it's hard to watch what I thought we were descend into policies, which I will say, in my mind, are demonstrating levels of cruelty. And it's a reminder that when the wrong human beings are in power, whether it was 2,000 years ago or 50 years ago or today, it can be scary. And I'm realizing that things don't really change, and nothing perhaps has changed. So the wrong human beings given too much power always have been and still can be extremely dangerous. When cruelty is the underlying thread of power, people die. And so I know this is Easter, and I feel like there's a bit of a darkness in the air today. And there was darkness in the air back then. And I am an optimistic person, and so I have been privileged to be able to spend most of my life looking away from that darkness, pretending that we're better than that, pretending sometimes even that the darkness doesn't exist, because for most of my life, the darkness hasn't existed in my bubble. But I also know that we can't look away from that right now because it's in our face. It was in their face back then, and they couldn't look away from it either. They were engulfed by it. And so today, unfortunately, we still live in a world where some leaders, not all leaders, but there are leaders who are thriving on their power and foreign to my understanding, though. It seems like there are people that are really almost thriving on their ability to be cruel. And to me, that's heartbreaking. It's disgusting. It makes me want to look away. And yet, when you look at the Easter story in its entirety, the whole story, there's parts of it that make you want to look away. Because it is a story about power and cruelty and betrayal. And if the story ended on Good Friday, the world would be in quite a mess. But the full story does not end on Friday. The story continued on. The story continues on because love and hope and creation continue on. So juxtaposed to the abuse of power, there is always, and always has been, another power, a quiet power, an underlying strength, a thread of love coursing through everything that was happening. 2,000 years ago, there was this small, yet quietly powerful group of people called the Essenes, who were able to see beyond the veil, who navigated a dangerous world while quietly persisting in resolute resistance through community, connection, and commitment. There was a message of hope in the midst of the power, in the midst of the cruelty, when things seemed like it was at its darkness. There was always the hope. Because there was that thread of love that was always weaving its way through the world. The Essenes saw this clearly. They understood that the system that they were in under the power of Rome was cruel, but they taught love anyways. Jesus knew his message would not be received by those in power, but he moved through the world with compassion anyways. Mary Magdalene was silenced, but she stood, remained by his side through it all anyways. As a mother, I'm sure that Mother Mary wanted to look away, but she endured anyways. So what was the power that kept them going? Love. The love of a mother. The love of a partner. And the cosmic love of a broader connection with Source, or what some might call God. The love never died, because love never dies. If love could die, we would not be here. The cosmos would not be here. The flowers would not be blooming. Love is the thread, the life force, the oxygen that keeps us going. And we can forget that sometimes. We can be, and I know I am, shocked, and I have to occasionally look away from the cruelty in the world. But the reason that we are shocked and we have to look away is because the cruelty is not the natural state of being. Hate is not our homeostasis. Love is. And that is why the hate and the cruelty are so painful to behave, because we know in this deepest part of ourselves that that is not who we are. And that's why it hurts so much to see something being reflected back at us, because we know that's not how this world is supposed to be. And so what the Easter story says to me and reminds me is that there is a reality beyond what we can see. And the Easter story, the Sunday, the boulder being removed, was the breaking of the veil. It was a demonstration in real time that the world is more than we realize. The world is more than what our five senses tell us. And this is where my hope comes from, the knowing that love is eternal, that there's more, that there is so much more to life. And I touched a little bit on it last week when I shared the podcast called the Telepathy Tapes, that this is a series of podcasts about a researcher who has been doing research and interviews with nonverbal autistic children, and the realization that these children are amazing and they are communicating with their mothers through mental telepathy, and they are communicating with each other through mental telepathy, and they are not as embodied in their bodies as we are, as many people are, but they are engaged in a way that many of us have no concept of. That, for me, is where the hope is. That is an example of this veil that is starting to be removed. We have stories by people like Anita Moriani, who had this beautiful book called Dying to Be Me, when she shares her story about being at the end stage of stage 4 cancer and actually having her near-death experience, being taught that love is all there is, and she came back from that and her body healed itself, and she's this amazing leader and speaker in this world today. That is the veil beginning to be released. This is where the hope is that there is so much more, and what we are moving towards is so exciting as our science and our spirituality begin to intersect in a way that is just going to open the world for us and open the cosmos for us. That's where we're headed. And I don't think that whatever planet ship, spaceship, my analogies don't always work, I don't think that that's stopping. And there is a lower level of consciousness, I believe, that is kind of stuck with the old, kind of enjoys the density of the power systems the way that they are, and they're holding on for dear life. And when that energy is holding on for dear life, what happens is we start to get stuck on Good Friday. And that's what it feels like right now, that there's a group of us wanting to be stuck on Good Friday. But that is not what Easter was about. And there is no power in holding on to that. So this is the consciousness that Jesus was trying to bring in 2,000 years ago, the story of the Essenes, the spiritual community that raised Jesus. It was this new consciousness, trying to get people to understand that. And 500 years before that, this is what Buddha came in and helped expand the consciousness. And sometimes we see it, and then sometimes we get stuck, and the veils take over, and the darkness descends over our eyes again, and we're shielded from it, and we get scared. But now is not the time to be scared. As our opening words said, Easter is so much more than the Christian religion and what the Christian religion has made it. The story did not begin there, and the story does not end there. Because love did not die in that chapter of the story, and love has not died now, because love never dies, because it cannot die, because that's all there is. And so I want to end this morning with some closing words that came to me once again last night. I love how things kind of just come when they need to. And this was written by a person named Astrid Madeline White. And she writes, "Before the world called her a whore, before the church buried her story beneath centuries of shame, Mary Magdalene was the counterpart. Not a follower, not a bystander, but the equal, the feminine frequency of Christ consciousness. While others scattered, she stayed. She wept at the tomb, waited in the silence, and became the first to behold the risen light. She witnessed the resurrection, felt it in her bones, heard her name spoken by the divine. And in that moment, the most sacred truth was revealed. Life is eternal. Love transcends form. The feminine was never secondary. She was the portal. Jesus may have carried the light, but Mary carried the remembrance, the knowing, the codes, the gospel that could never be written in ink because it was always meant to be felt. And maybe this is the real gospel, that death is not the end, that rising is real, that the divine lives within us, in our grief, in our devotion, in our return to truth. The resurrection wasn't a miracle for one man. It was a prophecy, a legacy for all of us. A call to remember that no part of you is ever truly lost. Not the parts that broke, not the parts that wandered, not the parts that were crucified by life. They rise too. This Easter, I honor the Magdalene within us all, the one who stays, the one who knows, the one who doesn't need a pulpit to be holy. And I honor the Christ not just as a savior, but as a mirror of what's possible when we embody love and die to all that is false. He rose, she remembered, and their story still lives in us. We'll have the choir sing us out.
He who holds the
we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take. May love guide you on your way. Go now in peace. Amen.